Some people have said that having kids can help you become really great at prioritizing. That hasn't happened to me yet. I still have a million balls in the air and I'm dropping some. The other thing I've heard people say is that it kind of gives you a kick in the ass. Like all of a sudden you have this immense responsibility. I will tell you that I haven't felt that. And I think it's because I've thought about this because my dad asked me this and other people have asked me. Like nothing's right like it, right? Like he's born into the world and all of a sudden you feel this pressure. Well, actually, no, I didn't feel that. I was excited and happy. And I think it's because I've been running a bootstrap business with a head count where people have families and I have to sell new client accounts every 3 months or else we're losing money. And so I've already had immense amount of pressure for 5 years. And so I'm sort of immune to that. It's just one more head that I think about. Of course, the most important because he's my son, but the pressure is not the same, I think, that some folks experience where they are in their life. Maybe that impacts it.
Welcome to Founders and Empanadas. So excited to have you on, my friend.
Yeah, Joshua, thanks for having me on. I appreciate the Uber Eats direct to my door. I actually didn't think that was going to happen. I thought maybe it was something that was being delivered overnight. I was confused, and then 15 minutes ago, someone knocks on my door and empanada.
All right, let's dig in. Let's see what flavor you got.
I must confess, I already ate one because I was really hungry. So I had one before this even started. This one's different. The other one was, I think, beef. This has got, I don't know, actually. It's got a little bit of a different taste. Like, it has maybe a chicken, but it's got some seasoning to it.
We got mystery meat flavor. Okay, let's see if we'll figure it out during the recording.
It tastes good, though. It tastes good.
Awesome. Well, Devon, I'm super excited to have you on today. We'll be giving our listeners a masterclass on product marketing, and no one better to do it than you. And especially for this episode, I'd love to frame it around the perspective of being a founder, one that, like yourself, had a recent baby. And that's also the company, but also managing all the trials and tribulations that come with being a recent father.
Yeah.
Well, first and foremost, congratulations on your recent child.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. He's just over 3 months now. He's 3.5 months, which is a really good, so far, it's been a very good age.
I love it. And I remember your LinkedIn post that I totally adored was when you were talking about the month that you took off, how that was your most profitable and highest revenue generating month at Fluvio. And I'd love to hear a little bit more. Like, what were the changes that you put in place to empower your team for that to be your top month?
Yeah, I think in general, I give folks a lot of autonomy, which can be good and bad. I think that's just how I've always operated. Even when I first started managing a small group of like 2 folks, I never really had the desire to get in the weeds. And now that I operate Fluvio, there's 11 of us. It's not like we're enormous. I've built a structure where I have 2 very senior folks. Their titles are principals here at the consulting firm. And I really lean on them for just so many things. So when it got to the point where I knew Conrad was going to be born, you're probably going to hear him crying, which will be a funny effect to this. Hear him crying right now. When it got to the point where he was being born, it wasn't that challenging, to be honest with you. There's only a few things that I really knew that I intimately was involved in that no one else had purview into at the time. And mainly it was business development, sort of like sales, discovery calls. And then a lot of the team management stuff was already in place. So I drafted up a couple SOPs, made sure they had what they needed. And ultimately it was positioned to them, and I think accurately so, a really good opportunity for them to get involved in some of the company building, less the client work. And they got to experience firsthand what it's like to have a sales call go really, really well. And then you expect a contract to be signed. And then 2 months later, there's no contract, So it was a good experience. And to your point, the company performed really well when I was gone. And that's just a reflection of, I think, the folks that I've hired and then the environment we've created, which I guess starts with me, but I definitely can't take full responsibility of.
And then when you gave the team that level of autonomy on the company building side, after you came back from paternity leave, did you find it challenging to insert yourself back in when it was going so well?
No, they were thrilled to have me back. They're like, that was a great experience, but I'm sure they were, and I'm very much appreciative for them jumping in because it's not like their core responsibilities changed. They still are in charge of a small book of business. They, manage client accounts on behalf of Fluvio, and I just gave them additive responsibility. So no, when I came back, it was pretty seamless. They were able to take a step back and really were thrilled to have me back. I guess from a sales perspective, it was a little rusty, I guess, coming back in and having discussions with folks, but it took, not too much time. And that was the first time, I don't know about you, that was the first time I took a significant amount of time off. That was 4 weeks. And it did feel different to take that amount of time off. But it wasn't terribly difficult to get back in the weeds. But yeah, I mean, what's the longest you've taken off since you've sort of near work?
Yeah, I did a full Asia trip a year ago for a full month. But I'll admit, my manic energy was forcing me to check emails and on some Slacks. But it was awesome to see how well the team took care of everything.
Yeah, I was still like, there's some things that I still manage, back office type stuff, payroll, contract signatures. I was like still in the loop, right? But I wasn't, I had no meetings. I was not sitting at my desk unless I needed to do something or wanted to do something. So it's not like completely checked out,
And now you have the weapon of being able to bring your son on a video call whenever there's a tough conversation.
Yeah, so I work from home. If you're watching this, I'm in a home office. My wife, who's now back to work, also works from home. So we've had the opportunity to be around him while we work. And there are some times where I've had to pull him in here and put him in his bouncer next to me when I'm in some calls. Luckily, it hasn't been problematic because there are times with an infant where they just cry and you don't know how to stop it. And if I'm on some important call, that might be an issue, but so far it's been so good. And it's fun. Yeah, it's fun to have them around. We also had an offsite in Denver where I live. I had my employees come to Denver because I didn't want to travel. This was, I think when he was 2 months old, and I brought him out for happy hour and was carrying him around on my chest, and everyone got the opportunity to meet him, which was fun.
Awesome. Yeah, my VP of Ops, Lendl, he's amazing at pulling out his newborn during the most challenging conversations, and it immediately eases all the tension in the room. So that's definitely a secret weapon. Shout out to his son, Rip.
There's something there. That's something I had not incorporated into external calls. Maybe I should.
Yeah, they love it. So Devon, now that you're a new dad, how has that shifted your understanding of customer needs and pain points from a perspective in any unexpected ways?
I mean, I don't know directly to product marketing but in general, I suppose, like, I've been operating my whole professional life without any real mega core responsibility at home. Obviously, I have a wife and we make joint decisions and stuff, but I could pretty much be on at all times, like be on, right? Like working pretty vigorously, available, never really saying no to things was kind of the way I've always operated, which I think probably still serves me pretty well. After having Conrad, it definitely has started to shift my ability to do those things, frankly. And I won't lie to you and say that I now am different. But I think I'm changing. And I think it's like a process of changing. He is a huge priority, if not the priority in my life right now. Obviously, just our family is priority number one, but he's the critical new component to that. So there are definitely times where, I've had to recognize that, I have to step away from work or even thinking about work, prioritizing that in my day and really focus on him. And then the other thing is just being patient. Like, I'm a fairly impatient person. And again, I'm not all of a sudden patient, but he's teaching me to be patient. I think that's probably the most noticeable thing that I've been experiencing is that I need to become super patient. But getting back to your question, it hasn't changed the way I've like, thought about my career, product marketing, but it has changed my appreciation for what other folks, whether they're at, Fluvio, and most of my team at Fluvio is a parent actually. I was sort of late to that in the company, and multiple kids and difficult family circumstances, and the ability to kind of maybe turn that off and focus on work, I think wasn't fully appreciative until I've had to do that. Um, it's certainly not an easy thing to do.
Devon, are there any strategies that you've developed for still being able to maintain that sort of energy for building your business while also handling the sleepless nights and being able to turn things off to spend time with the family?
Tips? Was that the question? Sorry, I missed the beginning.
Yeah, give me your tips. What are some strategies you found that worked?
Oh man, tips. I guess the first thing, it's pretty biological, is prioritize rest. Like, when you have a kid, it's very, very difficult to find time to rest. And that's critically important. I've always been an amazing sleeper, so I think I've taken that for granted. But when you are forced to get up multiple times throughout the night, and then you have an 8 a.m. call, you'll notice you're just not sharp. So, and then that then bleeds into the rest of your personal life and family day. And so finding time to rest, I think, is really important, and really getting good at prioritizing that. Like, my wife and I now go to bed when he goes to bed, which is like 7 p.m. Like, we're in bed. Sometimes we'll meet and then, we'll slowly ease into it. But we, our whole pattern has changed. And then I think some people have said that having kids can help you become really great at prioritizing. That hasn't happened to me yet. I still have a million balls in the air, and I'm dropping some. Maybe I'll get better at that. The other thing I've heard people say is that it kind of gives you a kick in the ass. Like, all of a sudden you have this immense responsibility. And I will tell you that I haven't felt that. And I think it's because I've thought about this, because my dad asked me this and other people have asked me. Like, nothing's right like it, right? Like, he's born into the world and all of a sudden you feel this pressure. Well, actually, no, I didn't feel that. I was excited and happy. And I think it's because I've been running a bootstrap business with a head count, where people have families, and I have to sell new client accounts every 3 months or else we're losing money. And so I've already had immense amount of pressure for 5 years. And so I'm sort of immune to that. It's just one more head that I think about. Of course, the most important, because he's my son, but the pressure is not the same, I think, that some folks experience where they are in their life. Maybe that impacts it.
Interesting. And are there any other areas of being an entrepreneur that you've found you've gotten a competitive advantage by being a father that others may not have?
I mean, I guess just taking time. Like, I was hesitant to take time off in general, and obviously the having a son was the impetus to do that. But even if I were, single, I think taking time off is good. And the max I ever did before this 4 weeks was like a week and a half or something. And during that, and my wife and I went to Europe for that, went to Italy. And during that, I remember coming back with like a lot of excitement and feeling invigorated and having ideas and starting those ideas. So I think there's like unplugging. It feels like you're taking a step back, but it's not. It doesn't have to be. I mean, maybe if you really truly are totally disconnecting your brain and thinking from work, but if you're a founder, that doesn't ever really happen. And so sometimes it's good to do that.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that too. At least taking a mental health day or just some gaps to be able to shift from, using the amygdala fear-based part of my brain of like, let's take out this fire, to moving towards the prefrontal cortex and using the more creative and innovative side of the brain.
Exactly. Yeah. And just recognize things that maybe you don't have the time to when you're just like sitting in the trenches every day.
So now that you've had your newborn, has that changed your perspective on what metrics really matter for the product success, or what your clients, or even just internal metrics?
I wish I could give you an answer that was really compelling, but no, it hasn't really changed that much. Yeah, it hasn't really changed too much of like the way in which I operate the company or what we're focused on. Um, I've over time, and I don't know if this is related to that, but I've really started to trim our metrics and like what we're focused on. I used to have, I think we had like 7 different KPIs that I would have up for the year. It's like these are, I have goals for the year, which is always like three core goals, and then I had metrics. So it's sort of like an OKR like system. And over time, I've slowly started to knock those back and focus on the big ones. And this year was the first time, which every kickoff to the year, I start with a recap of what we did. I present quarterly performance to my team every quarter, but at the end of the year, I do a full write-up and I look at the full year in totality, and then I present what our goals, focus areas, and metrics are for the next year. And this was the first year where I really trimmed to like the 4 core metrics for us, which were essentially centered around growth, so revenue, profitability. So for us, that's consulting utilization, and then quality, so client NPS, among some other factors. I used to have things like Fluvio employee satisfaction or employee happiness, which is something that Gusto measures, which is critically important, but I think that feels like a secondary thing. If we do all these other things really, really well, and we allow for an environment where people can grow and feel empowered, then they're going to be happy. So it just felt like there was a mismatch. So I'm not sure if it's related to family life or having a son, but in general, I've just really tried to strip back and focus on what are the few things that really do matter? What are the things that are kind of just like secondary, frankly?
Also, just curious, with your OKR setup, do you have specific people that own each of those KRs, or is it globally across each department?
No, it's across the team. There are certain areas that you can obviously draw a closer line to folks. So like for me, consulting utilization rate is on me, because I have to make sure that we have accounts stacked in order for consultants to be busy. We also have an extension or renewal rate goal that I failed to mention, and that is more tied to the principals and consultants who are leading engagements. I'm not a part of any sort of client work today, so our work tends to be with enterprise, mid-market, and enterprise technology companies. We assign teams, we deploy them, we integrate them, and their goal is to do amazing work and do such good work that clients can't foresee a future without them, so that they naturally will be tasked with focusing on other really big challenges that they're facing, whether it's under the product marketing organization or frankly just more broadly, go-to-market challenges, penetrating a new market, thinking about revamping their suite of products, looking at pricing and packaging. Some of these things don't always fall into the product marketing organization, and we're starting to move in that direction too. Yeah.
And I know we've spoken in our Hampton group about a new service line that you're offering of recruitment of product marketing consultants. I'd love to learn a little bit more about kind of how you proceeded with that line of business and what you're looking forward to in 2025.
Yeah, that is for sure the most exciting new area within our business. And we've tested things we've been in business for 5 years. Consulting in that deep embedded consulting model that we've modeled after the likes of McKinsey is our bread and butter. That's the core of our business. And we're in this niche field of product marketing. We got in early. We kind of created this niche category. So that I think will always be our primary core business. And we do really well there. But over the years, I've started to think about, well, what are the other steps that we can take left or right that are additive to that don't take away from it, but are in some ways could actually be accelerant of the core, creating some sort of flywheel effect, right? And tested a few things out. Some things have worked. Some things have been sort of flat. And recruiting has always made sense to me. because at the end of the day, we're a talent business, right? People come to Fluvio because we have great product marketing talent and we have processes and infrastructure to be successful at what we're being tasked to accomplish. But so I always knew that recruiting sort of played right into that. It's like whether you contract us for our talent or we help you find your full-time talent, we know product marketing in and out. We're the home of product marketing talent. I was reticent to launch it just because I don't know about you, but recruiting people and interviewing people, and it can be a long, time slog kind of business. But then as soon as I started to learn a little bit more about the model itself, one, it became very attractive from a business standpoint. Like, oh, wow, you can place someone and charge 20% of their annual compensation. I already have hundreds, if not thousands, of product marketers that I know intimately. I can make those connections pretty easily. And I got people knocking on our door all the time saying, I love what you're doing. I'm a product marketer. Can I be involved in some way? So I knew I had the network for it. And then I learned the business model. I was like, yeah, damn, that's a pretty attractive business model. And then I started to think, well, if you get involved in some of these higher level roles, right? You're recruiting a director or a vice president. There's a little bit of an art to it. And I also enjoy conversations, right? Like this, or, I just think talking to people who are like-minded is valuable. And so I've been taking a lot of meetings over the last several years, even if it's not for recruiting. So I said, all right, well, let's give it a shot. And we announced it. And all of a sudden, it's really blown up. And I don't know about you, but the way I've built Fluvio is I've done everything myself for the first one or two runs, right? For consulting, I own the first 4 or 5 consulting engagements, and then I started hiring people. Recruiting, that's what I'm doing. I'm running it soup to nuts, buying the tools, doing the work, putting the intro calls in, and I'm starting to build up a process around it. And then eventually, hopefully, I'll hire around it so that I'm not the one doing it. I'd be curious. Do you do that, or do you just hire someone who's already done it before, and you're like, all right, go do the thing that you do?
Yeah, definitely the former. My business is all about talent. And the first couple of years of NeoWork, actually, I conducted every single interview myself. And since then, I've been able to hire a great director of people to take that off my plate. And even with more senior interviews, if it's someone that's reporting into one of my direct reports, I'm still going to do a dotted line to myself and be involved in those interviews. Even just with building out processes with the business, I definitely have prioritized finding someone that is an expert in it, and pulling from their experience, but still being involved in the early building stages for any type of new line of business at NeoWork.
Yeah, because also, what if, I've always felt if I give someone the ability to build something from scratch without my being involved, I just worry when they leave, right? Like, I don't anticipate having the same employees forever. I obviously would love to retain the best folks for as long as possible, but they're going to leave eventually. Good for them. Then I have to learn that thing from scratch, and I might not even understand what went into it. And that's just where breakage occurs. So if it's all possible, I do feel like getting the founder involved and putting the process in place from the get-go eliminates or at least mitigates some of that breakage risk.
Absolutely.
All right, I think we should get into round 2 of the empanadas.
Yeah, thank you for saying. I've been looking down at it and been wanting to eat.
We'll figure out what the mystery meat is.
No, it's either pork. It's either pork or chicken, but it has some chili peppers in there, I believe. So it's a little bit of spice, and it's minced, very minced. So it's hard to tell.
Yeah, I like to get spicy ones to make this kind of a take on hot ones.
I was gonna say, you ordered this, right? So you should know what I'm eating.
No, it was actually a VA that ordered it, so I'll have to check with her what flavors she got.
It's quite good though.
Awesome, Devon. So let's dive in a little bit deeper into the product marketing side. So from all the different data points that you've collected working with all these different founders, what would you say is the biggest misconception that founders have about product marketing, especially for early stage startups?
Oh man, founders never truly understand product marketing. Is kind of the gist of it. I think there's an inherent challenge that makes sense. So, a lot of people say this, right? Like a Series A startup generally is when they start to think about hiring a product marketer. At that point, the company has a product manager or a few product managers, obviously heavily engineering focused, assuming this, it's a SaaS business. And so you're starting to think through, oh, well, who's going to support the go-to-market of these product launches? And then you hire a product marketer. So inherently, product marketers are fit into this, like, I'm a support function position. And therefore, they become a reactive content house, which is not really what a product marketer is. The best product marketing organizations are much more ingrained into the inbound motion of building a company, which is understanding the space, understanding who you're selling to, maybe what the multiple personas of that buying committee look like, other tools in the space, and then intimately understanding the product and how customers are going to use it so that you can build differentiation. And usually at a Series A or startup type company, that understanding and then the vision for what the future of that product is and how to market it comes from the founder. So you hire a product marketer, they come in, and then they start trying to do their job. And the founder, and again, I'm a founder, you're a founder, I'm guilty of this too. I'm like, well, no, actually, like this is actually how we should be positioning ourselves. And this is who we're going after. And I've been doing this since I started the company for 3 years. Like, what do you mean you're coming in here and telling me we should be targeting a different buyer and different use case? So there's this clash because you're stepping on the toes of the founder usually. So for that reason, I do think it's an immense challenge for product marketers coming into a startup. It gets a little bit easier for product marketers as companies expand to being a multi-product company and having different packages and then having different bets on where the company will grow. Then there's a little bit more autonomy that forms for product marketers. And then that's where there's just so many creative things that product marketing teams can get involved in that really move the needle forward and are not just content to support sales or marketers. So that's my little spiel on startup product marketing.
Yeah, exactly. Especially, Series B and C companies that have multiple product lines instead of working directly with the founder.
Yeah, that's right. So it's funny. So I founded Fluvio. I was coming from Amazon. I was at Etsy before that. I was at these big enterprise tech companies. And my thinking at the time was, I'm seeing so many technology companies invest in product marketing, most of which for the first time. I would envision that these startups, Series A, Series B, are being told by their board and their investors that they should be building a product marketing team, but they have no idea where to start. And then they look at salaries and they're like, oh, well, I'm not going to hire a product marketer. It's like the most expensive person on my team. Marketing is like not important. And so I always thought that'll be the great fit. I'll come in, they'll say, all right, well, there's someone from Amazon, he knows what he's doing. Plug him in, build the foundation for what product marketing means, and step away. And that was just the wrong assumption. I did that a little bit when it was just me. And then even now as Fluvio has grown, we take those engagements every now and again. But our sweet spot and really product marketing, the discipline's sweet spot is more mid-market enterprise tech, Series D and beyond, a lot of private equity backed companies, a lot of publicly traded companies, again, where there's many different products, there's different buyers, there's different global markets they operate in. And then there are a number of growth initiatives where they could expand in different ways. And that's where the product marketing challenge and the puzzle that these companies have becomes like our playground. So organically, our company, Fluvio's, migrated up. And even this year, I hope startup founders aren't listening to this. I basically told my team, like, I'm kind of done focusing on. They were always a segment for us. I'm like, let's just not waste our breath on that. We have 100 NPS with mid-market and enterprise. They love working with us. We love working with them. Like, we just got to focus on that. That is like the core segment for our business. And I do think for product marketers who are out there searching for jobs, I would, back 10 years ago, I even thought it would be super cool to work at a Series A startup. Still can be, but if you're a product marketer and you want to feel empowered, don't choose that.
And I'm curious about your model with Fluvio. When you insert your teammates as marketing consultants, what are some of the challenges with working with these larger companies, and especially with navigating through some of the politics of these different departments internally? Like if you get buy-in from the sales team, like, hey, is this the sales enablement material that you need? How do you have your consultants like really ingrain themselves with your clients?
Yeah, it is funny. Consulting, it is such a soft business. I mean, there's obviously the hard skills. And when you recruit a consultant, or when I recruit a consultant for my team, the hard skills are easier to assess. And you look at background and you ask for samples and you test them on projects. And that's the easiest part. The hardest part is soft skills, because to your point, an outside consultant is often perceived negatively. I mean, there's like books written about how you need to shed yourself of consultants. And so that's the environment sometimes we step into. So the way we combat that is we go through a very intentional onboarding sprint where we first serve a survey to our core stakeholder, and we really get a feel for a number of things. But one of those is, who are the people that we really need to work with and who are going to be contributing to our work or recipients of our work. And we'll go through and meet, say, 15 to 20 people, and we'll have different talk tracks depending on their role. And in those, we're obviously trying to learn more about them and themselves. We're letting them talk a lot. People like to talk. We take a lot of notes. And then we make sure we've marked like who are going to be our champions, who are going to be the people that we might come up against, and how do we influence them, both tactically, like what are the, are we going to be sending them Slacks every day? Are they going to be someone who's receptive to that? Or do they want like a weekly recap and they want it more sort of buttoned up? And then we deploy that. And then we slowly, try to win them over. The other pretty tactical thing is we immerse ourselves and get access to client emails. We're in their Slack channel. We're increasingly going to their offsites and flying to different events with them. So we don't want to be treated like an outsider. We call our structure a second party structure, right? We're not a first party employee, but we're not a third party agency. We're not a vendor. We're not an agency at all. We're a consulting firm, and we unify ourselves with your organization. We build relationships, and so it is, there's a little bit of a science to it that we've built over 5 years, but a lot of it is still sort of the soft skill set that you need to have.
Ooh, yeah, I'm going to steal that second part there. That's great. At NeoWork, we also frame it that we're not just a third-party BPO vendor. There's really that two-way accountable partnership, and that's just required for us to be able to set the team up for success.
You bring up a good point that it's important for them to know that that means something to them. Like they have to reciprocate. So we never will settle for, no, you're just going to be a consulting firm. Like we're going to give you this big project and we just expect the deliverable to come over our fence, and maybe you'll present it to one of us and then we'll take it from here. Like we have those situations one every probably 50 engagements. And when they happen, we never just let that be the status quo. We consistently are like, no, that's not how we're going to be effective. You need to treat us like we're a part of your team, and here are the things you need to do. And that's going to make sure that the way in which we perform is at a high level. So there is an ask on clients to treat us in a different way.
Yeah, it can't be a top-down client to vendor type relationship. So Devon, do you have any examples of companies that really nailed product marketing from day one? And maybe what are some things that we can learn from them?
Yeah. Oh man, putting me on the spot here. I will say a company like Gong, I feel like has done exceptionally well with product marketing. They have nailed their messaging and who they are and their positioning with their core product. And now you're starting to see them expand into use cases. They also just have an amazing product. And, if I would imagine part of that is the product marketing organization who intimately understands who they're selling to and piping that information back to product to help them prioritize what they're building. But from an outward, like external go-to-market perspective, they just do really, really well. They also feel different. Like I think they were one of the earlier companies that started to message a little bit more conversationally. I think what really irks a lot of people nowadays is that every company sounds the same, like this is marketers in general, but it starts with core positioning, which is what product marketing owns. There's a fear of being different, and you just want to sound, like you fit in. But studies show that that's really not what you want to do. You want to sound very different. You want to be, you want to carve out a niche. You want to stand for something, and that might not be a fit for some folks, but in general, that's going to be the right approach. There's actually a good book called Different: Escaping the Competitive Herd that I always recommend folks read. So if you're building a company, if you're in marketing or in sales, I recommend you read this book. It's by a Harvard Business School professor, Youngmi Moon. And yeah, it's called Escaping the Competitive Herd. And she talks about how it's so easy and how naturally humans basically start to form a herd. And you all start saying the same things and kind of incrementally making changes on competitors. Well, all that means is if you looked at a graph, it's just going like this. The real differentiators, and she cites them, I'm not going to remember them, like go in the opposite direction. Like, let's do something counterintuitive to what everyone else is doing, both from how I'm building product, but then how I message it, who I'm going after. And those, I think, are really compelling examples. And then she also mentions that it's important to limit choice. So I don't know about you, but sometimes we'll go to a company if you're doing some, discovery work on a new product, a new tool that you want to, contract for, and there'll be like 1,000 use cases. And there's like all these different modules and you're just like, I don't even know where to begin with it. Like I'm immediately intimidated. I don't know what I'm going to choose. I feel like no matter what I choose, it's probably going to be wrong. I'm not confident anymore. And so Youngmi Moon talks about having basically no choice at all. It's like, just make this super easy for someone. And so I do think some companies are starting to do better around packaging their products, even if it's a platform with a million use cases and different products or features. You got to make it super streamlined, super simple, and be very clear with what you're messaging. The other thing I'll go on a tangent about, it's sort of related to your question. It's not a direct company that's doing this well, but it's a trend that product marketers are noting, is that even the biggest companies aren't really saying anything. Like you don't really know what they are, right? Like a sales recording tool, a sales call recording tool. I'm just saying like a random one. This isn't Gong, but just in general, sales, recording tool could just be called that on a homepage header, right? Like the best product to record sales calls. And what they actually do, if you go to websites, it's like, sales, conversational sales AI, like orchestrator. And then you're like, what the fuck is that? I don't even know. Like that sounds like very impressive maybe, but in actuality, it doesn't really describe what the hell it is. And it just becomes this like blob. So increasingly product marketers are like being on this drum that you should be very descriptive and explicit in your messaging. And I think for startups, that's absolutely true. You should be doing that. Don't go that like, this is, AI Copilot for like, just explicitly call out what the hell the tool is, especially when it's a one product company. Like just go right to it. Otherwise it just makes the decision more difficult.
Totally. Yeah. It's really similar with my team as well. Like, removing as many buzzwords as possible or removing acronyms to make it less clear. The way I frame it with my team is, I'll give them a penny for every word that they can remove to make it more concise. Less is more.
Yeah. And it's funny how hard that is. It's not like easy to do, like people, it's hard for someone to get to like this very streamlined, condensed, but really hits on what the position is of the product. It seems easy when you read it. You're like, oh, it's such a simple position they have. But getting there is actually fairly difficult.
Yep. All right. I'm curious on just how becoming a parent yourself has changed how you interact with the parents on your team or maybe clients who are also parents.
Again, appreciation for what people go through. I mean, it's definitely difficult. And it's amazing that some people have been operating at sort of the clip that they've been operating on while they have all of these, big family responsibilities that are going on in the background, particularly in, I think, like a remote work post-COVID world. I know it's easier, and it is to some degree. It's nicer that I can work from home and my wife can work from home, but it also means that we're entangled with what's happening at home and that it directly interjects into work life. And again, I have multiple employees with multiple kids, and learning what's going on in the background. Definitely more appreciative of it. Um, and and then the last thing for me is I just need to figure out how to be more patient and learn from it. I can see why I'd become more patient, or why I will become more patient, but I'm not there yet.
Yeah, we were even just saying before this recording started that, when the microwave went off and it might have impacted your Wi-Fi, it's important just to be okay with that. It's real and it sometimes just happens.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to do that for me, and I'm sure for a lot of other company operators. But I think patience is important. I'm even doing that now. Like I'm trying to select a vendor for this next little idea that I had for Fluvio. It's not as big as a new recruiting service, but there's another idea that is interesting, and I'm looking for vendors to partner with. And my gut has been like, I found one, like just move forward. But I'm now telling myself, well, be patient. What's the point in launching it this week? I can meet with 3 other vendors and have these diligent calls and go through, and then make a better decision probably in 4 weeks. I might make the same decision, but at least I know that it's the right decision in 4 weeks. Because I literally have been thinking about this. I'm itching to just say yes and then build this thing so tomorrow it's live. And I'm like, no, you're rushing. Be more patient.
Yeah, definitely get that. It's a competitive advantage early on, and especially when it gets bigger and you need to get more stakeholders involved and really make the calculated decisions. So, Devin, are there any books that you can recommend specifically around product marketing?
Um, let's see. I listen to just a lot of tech podcasts that everyone listens to, frankly. I do, like I would say the biggest personality in the product marketing space is April Dunford. Have you heard of April Dunford? She, yeah, is like, positioning, messaging guru of sorts. She has a podcast. She has a few books. She's by far, in a way, sort of like the highest influencer, if you will, in the space. I'm sure that podcast is good. So I'd recommend that one, I suppose. And then going back to that author I mentioned, Young Mi Moon, she has a podcast with 3 other professors called After Hours. And recently she's sort of stepped away. I don't know if she's no longer doing it, but the other guys that she did it with are still doing it. And it's product marketing, partly because she is the sort of marketing person at Harvard at Harvard Business School. But even just like they talk about the topics they talk about are very much related to how do you position a company, how do you find growth levers in different industries and use cases, smart decisions that leaders are making, and they're just highly educated, well-spoken people. So it's a nice podcast to listen to.
Last question for you. What's one strongly held belief that you think 90% of other founders would disagree with?
Interesting. I didn't prep for this, but my honest answer to this is kind of counterintuitive to what I'm saying about prioritization. But my philosophy has, which again has served me really well up until this point, has been default to yes. So example being someone reaches out, they're like, hey, I think what you're doing at Fluvio is interesting. I also want to do consulting and would love to meet. Sometimes I would imagine folks would say, well, that person's probably going to try to compete with you. Also, there's no benefit for you meeting that person. So why would you say yes? I say yes. I've historically said yes, like 90% of the time to those calls. And it takes time, but I learned something from it and it adds someone into my network, might be valuable later on. Um, I've helped them in various ways and, good things come around. So I think saying yes to things, same thing with like testing new ideas internally. We just had our offsite, like I mentioned, in Denver. And as a part of that, we had everyone sit down and come up with big ideas for Fluvio. And I want to test like 7 of them. I'm like, yes, we should do that. And even if some people disagree, I'm like, why not? Like, let's just test that. So I'm more inclined to say yes, both with meetings and my time, but testing new ideas. But I've heard that the key to running a company is saying no. That's like I've seen that phrase like everywhere. You got to say no. But I haven't operated that way.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and enjoying some mystery meat empanadas with me. I actually just found out from my VA that they're chicken, apparently. And Devin, where can people find out more about you online?
Sure. Yeah, standard stuff. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So Devon O'Rourke on LinkedIn, and then I would say Fluvio's LinkedIn company page is becoming a bigger resource for really anyone in the tech space. Obviously, product marketing is our sweet spot, but if you want to learn anything about packaging and pricing, how to enter a new market, how to increase ACV, all these sort of standard SaaS stuff, ROI calculators. We write up in-depth articles about that and we post them. So Fluvio's company page. And then lastly, fluviomarketing.com obviously will be a good resource for all of our content.
Thank you so much for coming on, and shout out to your son who's starting to teach you more about patience, and wishing you the best, man.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on. It's been fun.